And you are live.
All right. Welcome, everybody. I had a little bit of trouble finding the room, walking the halls all over the Chicago Stadium, but I think we found the room, and I hope you enjoyed the opening keynote. We are here at Microsoft 365 Chicago, and it's windy and it's cold, but it's actually, I'm here in Sammamish, Washington. It's gray, it's cloudy, it's rainy, but being with you all today here in the virtual world of Chicago. It is a sunny day and we're ready to learn all about SharePoint. This is going to be a whirlwind tour of all the things that SharePoint does to power Microsoft 365, and of course individual and team and broad company-wide level productivity. And it really is a teaser to a lot of things that you'll then hear throughout the rest of the day. So at the end, I'll definitely highlight a lot of the sessions that are in this track. But a lot of it will go deeper into a lot of things that I'm touching on. So without further ado, let us jump in and learn a little bit about our sponsor who is highlighting this specific track. This is Martin and PointFire.
Hi, I'm Martin from PointFire. This year I was hoping to entice you with a booth, games, prizes, giveaways. Okay, no, but I have to settle for 60 seconds here to show you our very cool new translation tool for the brand new SharePoint multilingual publishing feature.
The new feature is available for certain modern pages on communication site. Out of the box, if you click on Translation, it opens up a translation panel. From there, you can create a copy of the page. It doesn't actually translate it. Let's create one for French, and then let's go view that page. The page is still in English. Someone on your staff has to translate it and to publish it. Let's try that again, but this time I've activated PointFire Translation Automation. So once again, let's create one for French, and then let's view that page. By the time we view it, PointFire has already translated for your approval. Go to try.pointfire.
All right, so try.pointfire.com. That is Martin and team, and I say bonjour, hola, and molto bueno. Lots of great things you can do with multilingual in SharePoint, and of course to bring your pages alive when you're in a multi-geo, multilingual space. PointFire is a great solution. The last time I was in Chicago looked a little bit like this. My son sporting the SharePoint Fest Chicago event shirt. It was a great time wandering the city. I remember it was a little chilly, but in a good way, experienced a lot of great people, a lot of great content, and of course, experienced Chicago. So got a little touch of all the things that are around. But let us move into what is happening today in Chicago, at least specifically in this track. This is all about SharePoint and how it helps power that content collaboration across Microsoft 365. And from the breadth of everything that's offered and powered by SharePoint, it spans from things that we do as individuals when you're working with your files in OneDrive, as you're starting to share more and different types of content with lists and pages and news in your different team sites and communication sites, connecting with and powering on the back end, Yammer and Stream, and even some new experiences that I will show you with SharePoint Spaces. All of this underpins with the level of security that you would expect no matter what your content type is. SharePoint powering that experience has your back from a compliance perspective. If you ever needed to do an audit or an e-discovery type level of trail, you would be able to do that and do that within the confines of our service level agreement, which is one of the highest in the industry, backed by security and compliance, giving you the ability to add levels of governance, but really at the benefit of keeping IT in control with the value of how end users can feel empowered to get their work done as a team, as an individual, or if they're broadcasting across the entire company. The 2 points in the bottom right are we are driving a lot of this new experience by AI, by machine learning, some of which is done automatically on the back end, some is driven new with things like SharePoint Syntax, where you control what the machine learns, or you give it the reins to learn what your documents are and how your pages are aligned and what your news is about, to make it a more personalized experience throughout the intranet. And all the while, as it's always been, there's a platform angle to all of this. Whether you're building bots in Teams, whether you're building web parts in SharePoint, or you're building and leveraging the Power Platform, it's all extensible with the intent of giving you the great experiences on the front end to be able to connect to those the front end content, the end users, where they connect. A lot of where we'll land is in the intelligent intranet. This is not just portals, but a space that we talk about where we engage with employees and have that be a two-way conversation, whether it's a top-down conversation or with somebody like me at the role in Microsoft. I'm doing more of the bottoms up, trying to get my word out as a product manager. There's a lot of content that's shared. There's also permissions that need to be adhered to. So if I have a private either conversation or private content and I'm not wanting to broadcast that, I can do that in a space that's still within the same confines of both the platform and the storage locations. But I can also easily flip a switch from a permissions perspective and start to broadcast that very loud and proud at the right time in the life cycle of my message or my content. The other portion that we'll touch on towards the end is all about knowledge and sharing, and that isn't always a document. It's not always a chat. It could be something that's a little bit more ethereal, that a combination of a lot of media brought together in a way that I'm thinking more of a topic, not necessarily a specific person or a product. So we really aim for the intelligent intranet to look beautiful, to be easy to engage, to be personalized, and of course to be wherever you are on whatever device you're on. So it's highly dynamic, built with a lot of the components that you've leveraged in the past, with a lot of new innovation that's already landed and even more to come. So this is where the whirlwindy part of building out a Chicago presentation is going to come into hand. We're just going to whip through a lot of what powers SharePoint, and then we're going to see it, and then we'll wrap up a little bit at the end just to see a couple more things. So our intent is that you can build captivating content. This is just two visual examples of what it looks like on your standard web browser and on the mobile device. A lot of our applications give you a great experience, both unique to the device and of course unique to your content, so that it looks great, it's easy to read, it's easy to engage if it's multimedia, and it's easy to share. And this spans all types of media, whether it's a video coming from Stream, a conversation in Yammer, a document, a site, anything that you could imagine that you could build and use in the web. It's a great experience on mobile. The other side of it, of course, is the ability to manage this, to manage when it's published, who has access to it, who you publish it to, and of course the IT side of it is being able to track and manage the use of the service as it is unique into the customer's hands. There's a great new look and feel as you go to build out sites. There's ways to start from scratch, there's ways to start with templates, and there's even ways to start with some finished assets. There's a great way to get inspired. If you follow the link at the bottom right, that is our what we call the SharePoint lookbook that's now starting to up level to be really the Microsoft lookbook. But right now you'll see a lot of great sample sites, and if you see ones that you want to try or use, you can actually install them directly from the lookbook site and get a really great head start with some new sites. When you start looking at the different types of sites that people are going to build, one of the most common ones that people build oftentimes pretty early on is something that's a pretty broad portal or a site for the entire company. And this is meant to put out a lot of information, to house a lot of different sites owned by a lot of different people, and it is to build that ongoing two-way discussion. So if somebody reads something, if somebody sees a question and they have a response or a question of their own, they can do that right in the context of the content. And so that you can really build your communication strategy into your content strategy and design it to flow in the way that you want to promote your content, and again, have it be easy for people to consume and easy for people to break down those barriers of who can access their content and how easy it is to share and communicate around that. At that top level is what we call a SharePoint home site. Every customer in a tenant gets one, and it's something that you can build wherever it makes sense in your information architecture, but it's also something now that you can make the root of your SharePoint experience. So when you log into customername.sharepoint.com or you click on the SharePoint button in the app launcher, it'll take you right to your SharePoint home site. I will show you one in demo, so I won't drain this slide completely, but it really is where you want to highlight all of the things that you want to push from the top down. but it's also something that you can design to be very personalized so people see their news based on the groups that they're active in, based on people that they're interacting in, based on content that they're interested in. And that resonates with the types of sites that they will see, the type of content they will see, and of course that news feed, which will become a primary feed across a lot of different contents, a new web part that we call My Feed, that will really drive that to be a dynamic experience, both what the company wants everybody to know and what really is active right in front of each individual as they're signed in. So this is a great landing spot. It is what we've adopted at Microsoft in the journey of adopting more and more of the SharePoint experience, and it is what drives for 130,000 Microsoft employees. We have a parent level SharePoint home site that is what we call Microsoft Web. When you start to drill into then teams working together, obviously like today, we're having this great experience as a live event in Microsoft Teams, but we also want to start to push a lot of what the intranet is into Teams. So this is a bit of a echo of an announcement that we made at Ignite. This is what that portal, the home site, your parent level site, looks like as an app in Teams. Right now we're just calling this the company app, and if you look at the picture in the upper left part of the Teams application, you'll see where it says Contoso has the Contoso logo. That would have your logo. At Microsoft, we have our Microsoft logo. When you click on it, it takes you to your company portal that's designed with the SharePoint home site, and here as a match to that exact experience, so that it is the navigation elements, all of the communication devices, the one and two-way opportunities with the video streaming inline, and also things that then broaden out the search to the intranet, taking Microsoft Search and putting it in the context of SharePoint. And when you switch context, if you're into a more of a Teams experience, obviously that switches over to Search Teams. So Microsoft Search is a really important thing. I'll touch on that at the very end. But as you start to go and you think, okay, we're got the intranet and we're starting to communicate, one of the really specific ways that we've been designing in the last few years is to really have a news service that permeates all of these experiences, whether it's team news, whether it's org-wise news, but it really is to meet the end user where they are once the news is published. So you think of this as an author, I may create a news post and I can design it just like I can any other SharePoint page with great layouts and different columns, vertical, horizontal, and of course all the great web parts. As you layer in your content and publish it, it goes out into your intranet. You can design it to go to everybody, you can design it to only go to a certain set of people, and you can even start to add boosts coming in by end of year where you can have it very targeted by role, region, all of that kind of thing. But the real experience here is it meets the end user where they are at. You can program it so you can have a tab in Teams with all the news. You can have it, of course, come to the SharePoint mobile app experience, and there's a great news reading and consumption experience. Having it be a two-way dialogue also for people to provide feedback back is a really important part of how we're designing that communication side of SharePoint, again, within the context of Microsoft 365. So a lot of what we've talked about so far is really that middle part, the intranet. And as we expand out before we get to a few demos, there really is a, well, what else does Microsoft 365 get powered when you put SharePoint into the mix? When you think of communities and Yammer, if you're in the Yammer experience, a lot of what's powered by SharePoint there is the content storage. So if you add a document, if you leverage and put a video from Stream, all of the storage file platform is SharePoint. When you start to bring Yammer into SharePoint, you're starting to think of using the Yammer web part in a SharePoint page at the communications level. So there's a great two-way mechanism depending on how you want to build out your experiences. Skipping to the middle right in terms of teamwork, this really is to complement everything you can do in Teams. I will demo pretty much everything you can do in Teams from a SharePoint perspective, but think of this beyond what you're doing with meetings like today and calling and chat, and really layering in the ability to manage documents, manage lists, post pages, and design the pages so they're great little mini dashboards as a tab in Teams. And finally, at Ignite, recently we talked about bringing the video storage component of Stream onto the SharePoint file platform, but it really just continues what we've already done with the integrations, where you can have great videos playing in SharePoint sites, Now with the video stored in SharePoint, it'll open up some new capabilities to be able to do further search and audit, to be able to share a video externally. That's coming. That was one of our announcements. And certainly there's a high aspect of the artificial intelligence side of Stream, not only to promote other videos to you, but to do a lot of the machine translation of the audio and have that be a component in the search index. And I'll show you one example there. So to drain a little bit on when we start connecting and doing broader employee engagement, Yammer is a great service that's adapted over the years, really brought into the whole of our data centers across the world. So the service has gotten more and more embedded into the Microsoft 365 experience, and even more specifically now at how it's integrated with SharePoint. It really is our two-way dialogue mechanism when you are talking about broader communities of interest across the company type projects. And it's a really great place for people who are managers of communities to be able to then manage the dialogue and encourage conversation, encourage questions, to provide feedback, and have that be something that, again, you can put in context as the conversation component within your SharePoint powered site. Stream takes that similar notion. We've really brought this to a new level. This presentation is actually given using Stream. It is a live event. It's a special kind of meeting in Teams, or you could do it from Yammer if you're hosting it internally to manage Q&A. But it is something that's meant to be broadcast from one to very many. And Stream is the component on the back end. And one trivia about the Stream backend that powers these experiences is it was the same that powered the Olympics a number of years ago. Worldwide broadcast of video powered by what we reference as Azure Media Services. And it is the Azure Media Services that power Stream on the back end. We've just, of course, put a lot of unique user interface right up front. And the last component here before we jump into demo is SharePoint Spaces. I've got a fun one that I built out today so we can see it in action, but these are really for everyone, whether you're viewing it through the web on a browser or if you've got a mixed reality headset. This is a great experience in SharePoint to really experience content in a new way for people who are building these spaces to be able to organize content in a unique fashion and have it be very immersive. It is also an area of investment for leveraging it as a platform. There's also a extensible side to SharePoint Spaces, so it's no different than any other SharePoint site, except that it's more 3D than 2D, a lot more immersive, and a new space of investment for a different type of content in SharePoint. But again, meant to be pervasive throughout your intranet. So if you can think about if you're building training or education, or if you're wanting to help visualize data and promote that in a way where people can kind of glance around as opposed to navigating, multiple tabs. It could also be virtual tours, whether that's of a specific new space that you wanted to guide people through, or just a way for taking people where they may not be able to go or before they get there. And then from a content perspective, I've got one example in my space. It's a great immersive way to promote even standard forms of content like documents, videos, and whatnot. So with that, I'm going to set one last contextual scenario here, and then we're going to demo pretty much for the rest of the time. But in Microsoft 365, when you boil down to how do people actually work together day to day, it typically isn't just in one form or the other. It's oftentimes they're working on tasks and assigning tasks to each other, whether that's something they just jot into their to-do application or assign through something like Planner. The aggregate is these are tasks across the team as individuals or for the team that are pervasive in how you're managing your what needs to get done. Once it gets done, it disappears from view. Next to that is Microsoft Lists. This is a great way to track information. Information can take a lot of different forms in terms of tracking physical assets, tracking events like today. You'll see my one example in how I just built out how I can track the SharePoint productivity track. But it's a way also to not only have information, but be able to promote it in a very visual way based on certain criteria, have control of what the form looks like for collecting information or promoting it, and also to tie it to workflow. Very important in mapping to business processes, and especially have that be a dynamic update where the list may change in status, but it never really goes away in terms of different list items. And the last two things are real core to everything I've been talking about: managing content at an individual level in OneDrive, at a very broad level from a records or document centers in SharePoint, all blended together, hosted by the same SharePoint file platform to give you great access anywhere, to be able to take your content offline, and of course to be able to work with others in terms of near-time or real-time co-authoring, and have that be a really great experience with Office, and of course tons of other applications and file types. And last, the communication side, all of this of course wrapped in a great experience in Teams, also inclusive of how you share content through Outlook, and even the connection between Outlook and Teams. It really is to meet your recipients where they are. If they're in Outlook, we want to have a great experience of linking them to content, not sharing a version of the content. And that's pervasive in our common sharing experience. Whether you're in Outlook, whether you're in Teams, share your message, share your content, and have that be a way where it's really a single source of truth and a single dialogue. So let us start to see a little bit of the product. I'm going to switch over, and you'll be able to see my environment here. Where I'm going to start is in OneDrive, and just highlight a few things. There's a few things that are new, but highlight that OneDrive is where you manage all of your files. And this is RealMark, so this is my way of managing my content. I'm just going to put the folders into tile view, so you can see that some of these are just files and folders that I manage in my OneDrive. Some, when you see this link, this icon right here, those are actually stored in a shared space. Those are managed by a Microsoft 365 group from a permissions perspective. And since I have permissions, I was able to add it to my OneDrive. So instead of navigating, I have it directly in line, and it does all the same things that I want these folders to do. It is here in a single view. I can sync these down to my local desktop. But if anything is added or changed by other people who have the same level of access, I will see that here. So this is a shared folder. This is an individually managed folder. One fun feature, just to show it off because it's pretty new, is now you can come with me to the dark side. This is dark mode in OneDrive. Pretty exciting. The other thing that's pretty new, besides of course, your pervasive way of managing all of your files, is we have a new way to create a shared library. So it's a lot more refined. You go in, and instead of what felt like you were creating a new team site and overburdening, it really is to create a shared library. And it does it in a very similar way that we work within Teams, where you're just creating that asset so that it becomes a new location that you give a name, add your members, and create that. And so it could be something that I then add to OneDrive in this way. But on the left-hand side, you can see here are all my shared libraries across the various groups that I'm involved in, or if I had created it here in OneDrive. So there's a lot of ways to get to different content. There's a lot of ways, of course, to take it with you via sync. You can pivot in to see what's your recent content, to see content that's been shared with you, and of course, self-recover from any accidental deletions. So that's a quick whirlwind tour of OneDrive. The last thing, and I'll say this a couple times, is this whole experience is powered by SharePoint. All of the OneDrive file and experience is SharePoint. We just build a lot of the common user interface for everybody to have a unique experience, the best experience to work with your files. But where the files are stored is SharePoint in your same tenant, to that same level of security, compliance, and of course the ease of use. Now, when we switch over to Teams, this is sort of a meta point because I feel like we're in Teams showing off Teams, which is kind of fun. But this is my workspace for the podcast that I manage. And I work with about 8 or 9 people on a regular basis, and we invite our guests in when they're on the show so that they can have access to different content that we're producing. But we manage that pretty closely. But as you see here, we've got the conversations and chats going. We have our files that we manage specifically to the show, where we write all the different blogs and all the different discussion outlines. I've built a list. This is a Microsoft list. It's a pretty basic one that just tracks the different shows that we have. And the difference in color here is you see shows that are in green are in the past, and shows that are in yellow are ones that we're planning to come into the future. So we've got a simple makeup, and then once we publish the blog, we add the link here. So pretty simple use of a list, but for me it's pretty a great way. If I have any questions on this show that we last produced, I can go and pop open an asset, read a little bit about it, and then maybe ask Lisa, are we ready for the teaser on this episode? And then I'll post that down, and I'll just remind her that we're doing a demo so that she's not needing to do that just right away. But now Lisa will get a notification, and we are, once she provides a little bit of feedback, the experience, if I were to go back to the posts, is I can see that there's my question. If I were Lisa, I would click on this, and it takes me right back to the asset, the list item on the left, and the conversation on the right. And it's a really great way of thinking about really true SharePoint content coming through as a collaborative offering to people that are working and maybe only living inside of Teams. So that's one example of lists in Teams. When you look at bringing in the full home experience of a team site, this is a great way to build out what I want my team site to look like. So this is our pretty, again, basic home site of our team site for the intrazone. And this is all of the different, this is that same list using a list web part. Here are our main links for anybody that needs to go out and take some action on some of our common things. And on down, you can see it's a pretty simple layout for the home page. This is our OneNote notebook. And the last thing I'll come back to is the new intrazone 3-dimensional SharePoint space that I created. But first, we'll see it in SharePoint, and I'll show you what it looks like in Teams. So to talk about lists for a little bit, Microsoft Lists is a new offering very much based on SharePoint because it is an evolution of SharePoint lists. There's a number of sessions in this track that are going to drill deeper into SharePoint lists and a lot of the specific things that you can do. But I'm going to give just a broad overview. When you first land on Microsoft Lists, you'll see here Microsoft Lists. It's as if I had clicked the Lists app in Microsoft 365 that takes me to my home experience. One thing I want to show you is in the productivity track, I built out again a pretty simple list of all the different sessions, including Heather's kickoff. This is my session here that we're in right now, and on down through the rest of the day in the SharePoint track to learn from Amit, Stacy, Nut, and everybody from the team, with finally ending up with Christian's session. So this is pretty straightforward list. You've got when it is, the time, and this is using a calculation of relatively when is it. So in about an hour ago, 36 minutes ago, and 24 minutes. So you get a sense that you could have that representative of the specific time or relative to now. But I also want to visualize this in a different way. So it was pretty easy to add some of the column formatting that I chose here by just going in, choosing column settings, going to format this column, and you can see the different choices that I made to use a green fill and then to have the text be purple, just to show you a little bit of a difference. Let's change this to be golden. That's a little hard to see, so we'll make it blue. And it's pretty easy if I wanted to change the icon, to do a number of different things, to change the border since we're now blue and blue. And I've just really just been configuring this just to do some of those simple inline column formatting. But one other thing that we've had is now we've introduced the ability to have a gallery view. So this really takes into consideration a more card view layout, highlights the images that we have for each presenter, and then up-levels what it is, the information that we want to see, speaker title and time. And if you go in and you actually want to format this current view, you can go in the card designer and you can choose to show or not show the image. You can choose to move and arrange things if I want the time to come before title. And there's a lot of things that you can even turn things off if you didn't want to show certain things. Very dynamic, easy to use, and is something that, again, doesn't require you to have to go and build a lot of custom code or hire somebody to do this. It's giving you some of those basic capabilities to give you some really powerful visuals in what you can do. So if I go out and I'm just going to go in one unique example that I do for myself is I track and manage the different sessions that I'm going to be delivering. So I can take notes on who I'm working with, have the session title and abstract that I provided, and then have links out to different things. And this is just helping me as an individual track some form of information. It happens to be sessions and events. But I've chosen to do my own unique way of designing this. Some of it's just plain with lists. But in this example, you can see I've actually customized the form to have a unique header and a unique footer that actually links out if you want to learn more about me on my LinkedIn spot. But it also gives me the ability to then have it show up in multiple columns. And this is something that's pretty easy to do if you go into Configure Layout and you grab what we will have as sample code, or if you know what you're doing with JSON, you can see here you can put in the header code, the body code, and the footer code, and it changes the look and feel of the form. You can also do form integration with Power Apps if you have a higher level of customization needs. This just gives you an example of one thing that you can do in lists. The last thing I want to show about lists before moving on is the new list creation experience, and this is from Microsoft Lists. This is also the same experience if you were to create a list from within SharePoint. Again, we're just creating a different type of content, different way of describing our information, and some of the things that actually ahead of time, and I'll show you, the one that I used was the content scheduler template that has a unique set of columns, a unique set of color coding for the different format, and the expectation that you're going to have even pre-populated choice fields, all that I'm able to configure and change after the fact. But if I go to use this template and we just type in M365 Chicago and we choose green, and let's see, for bright ideas. The last thing that I really want to highlight about lists is I can choose to create a personal list, and this is something from an IT perspective that you can turn off. If you don't want people to create personal lists, it does get stored in their personal space, just like OneDrive in Microsoft 365. Or I can choose to publish this to create it in a SharePoint site that I have access to. That could be a team site or a communication site. So this is going to go into that same space, the interzone, and I'll click Create, and I will then get essentially a new list created with a template. You can see here all the columns. I'll add one item very quickly. If you've been working with Jay, this is the content title, Jay is cool. We'll set the status here to be assigned. The draft is going to be due on the 20th. Yeah, we'll make it at 12 a.m. We'll get Jay up early, and we'll have this be by the 26th. And this content type is going to be a blog post, and we'll add an image later. When I save that down, you'll see that already some of the choices and color coding is available, and you'll be able to do a lot of things like adjust your forms, and now you'll be able to do things like create a rule. So the one rule that I want to create here is if a column changes, so choose a column, if the status changes, send an email to, and in this case, I'll have the email sent to me. That's about it to create a rule. If I wanted to create another rule, I might do something that has a little bit more of some complexity, so that if I choose the, we'll do status again, when the condition is and the value is published, I want to send an email to, and this might be to my social team that's going to then tweet about it once this has been published. So I could type in an individual's name, or a group name, or again, have it be something that's tracked by the actual list. In this case, I might send an email to the author, and that was somebody like I named myself, that would send an email to whomever was named in that column. Click Create. Now I've got two rules running, and again, that is an easy way to see how this intranet from a teamwork perspective is powered by SharePoint through lists, and to even have these great experience of lists in Teams. The last thing I want to talk about here in the how I use it space is the SharePoint space that I created for the intrazone. So I'm going to expand this. I'm in the SharePoint site, the intrazone that we've been talking about. I'm here on the intrazone space that I had created, and I'm in the context of a SharePoint hub site, which we call the SharePoint, OneDrive, and Yammer space. Some of the sites that are under that hub are private to the team. Some of them are public communication sites to the rest of Microsoft. This just happens to be one that was that same site that I was showing you earlier, where we had the home page in the Microsoft Teams space as a tab. In this instance, this is directly within the site. So I'm now in the space, and this is a three-dimensional space that I can turn around. I can see and lay out in a lot of different ways, and if I go too fast, I can even make myself a little bit seasick. If I had a headset, if you look here on the bottom right, I could then get a much more immersive experience of this space in a three-dimensional, 360-degree way. In this, I can play videos. This might be a little bit loud, but this is our intro video that Chris and I put together about the Interzone. I have a way to represent who are the hosts, so that's myself, that's Chris. This is using the people web part within Spaces. This is our logo and a little bit about the show. This is another video that we created. This is Mark Kashman from the Interzone. And then as I spin around, you'll see that I've got content laid out all over the place. Just a little bit more about the Interzone. You can view this if you go to aka.ms/theinterzone. But the way that I use it internally, and especially in this space that I'll start to share internally, is just a way for people to get to know what is this show about, where can I go learn more, what is it all about, and as you navigate this, you see a lot of different ways where you can lay out your content, even to the extent where I have a Word document. And this happens to be one of the blogs that I published recently for the SharePoint Roadmap Pit Stop. This is the actual Word document stored in our team site that I can then have as an experience for people to review, learn from, whatever it might be that's helpful when you start to put documents layering in here. The way that you do it is if you were to go into Edit, this should feel like any other SharePoint site. The palette for adding a web part comes in, and I'll show you just to add a new document that's from this specific site. And if we go into Documents, I'll just pull in our logo again. Oh, that's not as fun. We'll pull in one of our blogs, and I'm just going to click on one of the older ones so you can see what it looks like. So once it's in the space, I can put it wherever I want. I can make it whatever size I want. I can make it so that it's a little bit easier to view. And when I republish and I circle down, now there's the document. I could have put it up here if I wanted. I can put it pretty much wherever I want, as long as I'm building out a unique experience for people to engage with this content. So that's enough about SharePoint Spaces. I'm going to switch over and now take us through just a few more things with a different persona, and that's to really talk about the broader intranet. And to be mindful of time, I will go just a hair quicker. But this is the root site, that SharePoint home site that I mentioned. This is the landing at Contoso, and this specific home page has been designed with navigation that's using the mega menu. There's one session around navigation in the productivity track that really dives deep into helping people get around your content, to get through your intranet. And in this way, you can design it in buckets like we have here: our company, people, values. And as you navigate through, the different options appear, and it even can take you to our original SharePoint experience, which we now call My SharePoint. I'm in here with editor capabilities, so I see the ability to edit, but everybody else will be able to follow the site, to share it more easily. And as they scroll the site, they will see news, they'll see the local weather using the weather web part, hot topics using the quick links and some of the icons and ways to describe content. Using the stream web part, you can design great ways for people to access and navigate through videos. And on down the page, you'll see that this is a great way for people to promote content, to be able to have conversations. This is the Yammer web part if I wanted to start a company-wide conversation. This is pulling in from Twitter off of the Contoso Inc. handle. And on down, you can see that this is promoting, most on the left here is top-down, that everybody has access to. Except for this one, the web part is actually built uniquely so that I'm seeing just news that's targeted to me in how my role is at Contoso. And on the right-hand rail, you'll see that once we get here, what's for lunch, it really starts to then become a more personalized experience. I see my news that's tailored to me. I see my documents, and this is actually an area of investment where it'll be a unique targeted experience that we call the My Feed web part. So there's a lot that you can do to design and bring in a bunch of information and have people be able to navigate and find using search. So that's the broad company level. This is a SharePoint site that has been designed just for news consumption. So if you wanted to promote a lot of news around your company, here at Contoso, they've got the news for everybody, news for the individual who's layered into the page, so it's a unique department level type scenario. And on down, even pulling in news from the external world as news links that would actually take you to news sources, or really any page out in the internet, but represented here as news that's been programmed for you. You have the ability, of course, layer in news that might be in the form of upcoming events. We've got today's event, M365 Chicago, and coming up soon, the GlobalCon 4. And this page is really designed with how you can promote news throughout the entire organization. And this is a great one where even if you've built out this site, you could bring in this as a page in Microsoft Teams if promoting the news is important to that specific team. When we go down to the specific level of a team, this is the Mark 8 project team, and it looks a little bit different because it's a team site. So we've got our left-hand navigation, we've put our content here, but we're also starting to pull in different things like our monthly Q&A town hall. Now, this might start off a little slow, but I remember somebody told me that there's a point in time that I wanted to jump to, and this is where I'm now leveraging Microsoft Search with Inside Stream that's in the context of a SharePoint site. So I remember somebody talking about that there was a lot of great information about the 3D modeling that we're going to be using within this. And if you notice, I'm here at the very beginning of the video, but I want to jump to this section where it starts to talk about that holographic experience. So if I want to jump right to there, it skips ahead to that point in time where that 3D was spoken.
With these holographic computing, the scenarios get even more exciting.
So it's a really great way that we're using the SharePoint index in the context of a video, in the context of some specific project or product or event site. So there's a lot of great ways to build out unique experiences, to pull in content from across the internet specific to your group in the context of bringing in something like a Power BI dashboard, bringing in a planner board. There's a lot of things that you can do to build out unique experiences so your team, and especially your teammates if you're the one building it, don't have to go all over the place. They can see it in one consolidated view that really is that, hopefully, enhancement of productivity powered by SharePoint. The last was I just wanted to show you where that asset came from. So this is that embedded video, and if you wanted to see, this is the transcript that got auto-created by the machine learning on the back end at the point of upload. Once the transcript is available, it's available to do the deep search within the video. It's also available to Microsoft Search across the company so that if you were searching just generically and you're wanting to find a number of different types of content, video would come up, and it's based on not just the title of the video or the description, but also what is spoken. So that's a very powerful way to bring in a lot of content. So to show that one last thing that I wanted to show you in Microsoft Teams is really just to hit home that whatever experience you're building and how you're leveraging SharePoint, we want that to be a great experience no matter where you are, whether you share things as a link in an email, whether you bring people into a different tab experience in Teams. This is a little bit of that extreme where I want to show you in Teams especially, you can expand and you'll see the dynamic nature of both SharePoint and Teams. And just for fun, I'll put this into full mode in the browser so you can see it in its most intense form. But this is a great way to really see this specific space. Everything that I was showing you before is functional. If I wanted to watch this video, skip ahead and see a couple different spaces.
We want to really break down some of the myths and highlight some success.
So it's a really great way to promote content. Of course, Teams is very important in the level of the ways that people can communicate with others and especially hold that conversation. And it's very easy to bring in all different types of information. The one that I'm going to show you, which is my last demo, is when you think of bringing in content from SharePoint, don't always just think about the site or the page. We want it to be a very open choice of what you're sharing. And in this context of Microsoft Teams, the new updated SharePoint tab app is a really great experience of what is possible that I think is a good summary before we close out on a few slides. So this is, if I want to bring in content, I can bring it in from the connected site that I was on, that Intrazone team site. And you can see here it's even recommending content, whether it's a page or if it's a list or a news item or even a document library. I could even also bring in from any SharePoint site. I had mentioned bringing that organizational news, which is probably managed by our internal marketing team that's company-wide. So I could go grab any URL from a SharePoint site and have it be a great single page experience as a tab in Teams. But as I go through now, I can pivot and see just the space, just the pages. Like here is how I pulled in the Intrazone space. I can see just the lists that are available to me, and I can see just the document libraries. And all of these have a way to navigate to bring in those same content types from other spaces that you have permissions to view. And you especially have to keep in mind, what does your audience or your end user have the ability to have permissions to access? So that's my whirlwind tour of all things powered by SharePoint. And we'll get back into the presentation here and just cover just a few more things that I think will emphasize, what you saw, and really hopefully advertise a lot of what's coming throughout the rest of the day in the specific track. So we talked about lists. I just have a little bit of information to hit home. Really, what are lists? These are intended to be simple to use, smart in how you can program with how they look and how they interact, how easy they are to share, and the flexibility from building out rules and building out so that the information is not only easy to track, but so that it works for you. The one point of clarity here is this is not a task app. This is really meant to track a lot of different types of information, and it is an evolution of SharePoint lists. I have one last video here that just gives a little bit of a view into what is it like to create a list in Teams, and I'll make this deck available, and I just have this in here to show you once, but also if it's easy for you to show other people what it is that you can do with lists inside of Teams. I showed you that point of creation, and this one just uses a different template. This is the issue tracker. Once you use the template, it's going to start to bring in a lot of different things. I'll call out one thing in our roadmap that we want to talk about that we don't yet have a pinned date for, but it's top of mind, is the ability to create custom templates. So a lot of what you saw here, to have the smarts of a template for color coding, for different types of columns, will also bring in the ability to have custom forms and the different rules that I showed you that were out there. But the real value with lists, like any content in Teams, is to have the content side by side the conversation. What it looks like that I wasn't able to show you in demo from a mobile perspective, and you can try this now with this link if you're an iPhone user, is this gives you great access to all of your lists, the same as that lists homepage that I could navigate from one list to the other. This gives me the same ability to navigate and go into my lists. I can edit list items. I can create new lists. I can share from here. There's a lot that I can do to interact with my lists, and it's not a dumbed down version. It's very full-featured, giving you all the capabilities that I demoed in the web, translated here in a nice mobile way. So this is in preview now. If you want to follow this link, you can go and try it today or try it soon. It'll be coming hopefully by end of year in a much more broader fashion. So let us drill into some of the things that I didn't demo today, and then we'll wrap up. So one of the things that I didn't talk about, but it is a new innovation coming to SharePoint productivity, it is SharePoint Syntax. And this is the first project to come out of Project Cortex, the first deliverable out of Project Cortex that gives you that back-end system that can help you better define your content and then automatically generate ways to showcase this content once the pattern has been defined. So there's ways to build AI models to understand the content, to then process it at scale, and you could do this at a document library level or pervasive. Once you've defined a document structure, to be able to then learn from other documents of the same structure and give a yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. And then once that's learned, to have that be something that's pervasive out for people to be able to then come across this in different ways in what we call topic cards, or to be able to do discovery through search, or to be able to have a center that people can go to that is more dynamically created than manually tagged. Once you do the modeling and the learning, then at scale is really where it starts to hit and hit a home run. What it looks like to then build out the model, this is if I was in a document and I wanted to deem what is the actual cost of this statement of work if I wanted to extract as an example. Once I've done it 4 or 5 times, I can then point it at hundreds, if not thousands or millions of similar type of contracts that will then model around and know what each individual asset is, because it knows what to look at. It's been validated by a human, but then validated at scale with AI model on the back end, which brings me to that point of how a lot of Syntex and Project Cortex are built, but I also think it's a pervasive way to think about how SharePoint powers Microsoft 365. It really blends the value of people working with each other, people interacting with data modeling and defining content, or getting some of the positive and negative outcomes so that it hits more on the positive and the AI gets smarter. But it really builds in as you start to detect things and discern things in a manual fashion, that it's able to then move to that ability to then process on the back end. Like you saw in the example where Martin and Pointfire were processing a page to translate it into a different language, that same approach where you're really blending both a human interaction with the smarts of a service on the back end really brings together an easier way to tag content, to know what it is, but then for end users to come across more relevant information, because a lot of the things have better metadata and tagging, but really just then come to the end user in a more discoverable fashion. I'm going to round out here with a couple of screenshots around Microsoft Search, because it is one of our backbone ways of finding content. We're building a lot of discovery engines, but there really is always this pervasive nature of Microsoft Search in whatever experience you are, and I'll touch on a couple here. Whether you're searching from Teams, we now have Microsoft Search coming to power the search experience in Teams. Of course, it's in SharePoint and OneDrive when you're looking for documents, sites, news, pages, lists, videos. All of those things are now a much more common experience of how you search, what the search results look like, and the context of where you're searching from. Couple more when you start to look at things powered by SharePoint Syntex. This is answers and insights powered by SharePoint on the back end, but pulling in information and wrapping it into this smarter way of consuming information. Same with knowledge. This could be a conversation in Yammer that's open in the public, pulling down and coming through as a result, or simple documents, the way that they've been tagged, the way that they've been leveraged or shared within groups, starts to dictate who might see that content as well. And it really gives you that single way to find anything or everything within Microsoft 365, no matter where it's at. So it's time for me to start wrapping up. Love that I got this chance to share what I know about SharePoint and how it powers productivity across Microsoft 365. And these are the speakers that are going to be then harnessing a lot of what you're going to see through the rest of the day. So you've got a great lineup of speakers in this track, a lot of great information. If you want to go deeper into any of these, I highly recommend staying through, learning about navigation, learning about lists, learning more about spaces, and some of the fundamentals around search, and really that common power of SharePoint and how you can leverage it either as an individual building the content and experience, or as a consumer. And then I will see you at the end of the day for Christian Buckley's Collab Talk, where we'll have a lot to discuss, and I'll be really excited to be a part of that panel experience. So with that, I want to thank all of the sponsors of Microsoft 365 Chicago, specifically Pointfire for sponsoring this specific SharePoint productivity track. I hope you have a great rest of Microsoft 365 Chicago. Thank you very much for enjoying this windy space. And my last slide is I hope that you join in supporting the Chicago Public Schools through the Children First Fund. You'll see this a number of times today, but I hope you'll take one moment to aim your phone at the QR code and think about buying some of the tickets for the raffles that will then go to donate to this great cause. So thank you to Jay and Michael and all the people at this event. Thank you, Ryan, on the back end for producing. And with that, we'll move to close. And I say, have a great, great, great rest of your Microsoft 365 Chicago. Thanks for joining.